The forgotten survivor, the ship floated in the endless black sea of stars. Broken metal hung like shattered bones, drifting slowly in silence. Lights that once glowed with life were now dead, and the cold void pressed against the wreck like a coffin lid. For years, no one came. For years, the survivor waited inside the wreck, hidden deep within the ruined corridors, one being still breathed. His people had abandoned him long ago. They were warriors from another world, proud and strong, but when the battle was lost, they escaped through the emergency pods. They promised they would return for him, but promises meant nothing in the endless void. He had no name now, only memories of who he once was. Days turned into years. His food supply had long dried up, and he lived off recycled water and whatever little energy he could steal from failing systems. His body grew weaker, but his will remained sharp. He refused to die, not like this, not. Forgotten in the dark, the wreck groaned and shifted at times, as if the void itself wanted to claim it. He listened always, waiting for a sound that was not his own. Many times he thought he heard something footsteps in the corridor, whispers in the silence, but it was only his mind playing cruel tricks on him. One time he even thought he saw a light blinking through the shattered window of the control deck. He dragged his broken body across the hall to check, only to find it was nothing more than a dead star flaring faintly in the distance. Hope had become poison to him. He told himself never to believe it again. Still, he could not kill the small fire inside him. Even after being abandoned, even after being forgotten, he told himself one thing: someone will come. Not his people, they were cowards who had left him to rot. But maybe someone. The years stretched on. His voice grew hoarse from speaking only to himself. Sometimes he shouted into the comms, though they were broken, only to hear his voice echo back. The silence mocked him. Then, one day, the silence broke at first. It was only a faint vibration, so small that he thought it was another trick of his mind. But then he felt the hum grow stronger. The wreck trembled, ever so slightly, as if some great engine had stirred the dead metal around him. His heart pounded. He dragged himself to the shattered window of the deck. And then he saw it. From the endless darkness, a light pierced forward. It was not the dim flicker of a dead star, not the broken glow of old wreckage. This was steady, strong, alive. Engines burned white as the ship moved closer. Its outline grew larger, sharper, until he could see the proud armor of warplating, the massive guns mounted on its hull. It was a warship, but not from his people. The design was unfamiliar, rough, almost primitive, compared to the sleek craft of his kind. Yet there was something terrifying about it, something alive. It was not drifting like the dead ships of his kind. It cut through the void like a predator. His eyes widened as he read the symbols painted across its hull. The letters were harsh, alien. But he knew them, for every race in the galaxy whispered about the species that used them. Humanity, the stories, came flooding back. He remembered what others had said of humans: reckless, brutal, relentless. A young race that fought like no other. They were not the strongest, not the most advanced, but they refused to bow. They would rather burn in the void than surrender. Fear gripped him at first. If the humans found him, would they kill him? Would they see him as an enemy, a scavenger, a forgotten piece of war trash? Or would they save him? The warship slowed, casting its shadow across his broken wreck. Its light swept over the metal bones of the dead ship, searching, probing. For the first time in years, he felt the air grow heavy with tension. This was not a dream, not a trick, not the whisper of the void. The silence was broken, and humanity had come, and deep inside, he realized something that made his heart beat faster, something more dangerous than fear, more dangerous than hope itself. He realized his story was not over, Asterisk the signal the human warship drifted closer, its massive engines casting a white glow across the wreck. The survivor pressed himself against the shattered window, his body trembling. For years, the stars had been silent. Now, the void itself seemed alive with the hum of power. He had not spoken to another living soul in so long that his throat burned just thinking of it. His hands shook as he stumbled toward the ruined console. The communication systems were half dead, but maybe, just maybe, they still had enough life left to send one final cry for help. He slammed his fist against the panel. Sparks flew. The screen flickered once, twice, and then dim lights glowed weakly across its surface. Static filled the small chamber, hissing like a serpent. "Please," he whispered, his voice cracked and weak. "Hear me." He pressed the transmitter, sending out a simple pulse. Nothing more. Just one desperate signal of life. If they were searching, if they were listening, they would hear it. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence mocked him again, just as it always had. He lowered his head, ready to believe he had only fooled himself once more. Then the warship stopped moving. Its massive frame shifted, and panels along its side lit up with scanning arrays. Beams of light cut across the wreckage like blades, sweeping. Every corridor, every broken chamber. The survivor froze. They had heard him. They were looking for him. He wanted to scream with joy, but fear gripped him harder than ever before. He had heard stories of humans. They were not merciful saviors. They were predators, fighters, survivors even more brutal than the void itself. What if they saw him as an enemy? What if they destroyed the wreck to make sure no danger remained? The survivor staggered back from the console. His breath came fast, uneven. His heart raced so violently that he thought it might burst. He wanted to be saved, but he was terrified of what that salvation meant. The warship's voice came suddenly, shaking the metal bones of the wreck. "This is the United Human Fleet Warship Resolute. We have detected a life signal. Identify yourself." The words were harsh, commanding. His knees nearly gave out. For so long, he had dreamed of another voice. Now it was here, and he had no idea how to answer. He swallowed hard and leaned into the comms. His voice broke, weak but desperate. "I am alone. My people left me. Please." There was silence on the channel, a silence that seemed longer than the years he had spent abandoned. He imagined them debating whether he was worth saving, whether he was a trap, whether he should simply be erased from existence. Then the voice returned, firm and cold. "Remain where you are. We are boarding." Boarding. The word filled him with both terror and relief. They were coming. Not just a voice in the void, real beings, flesh and blood, stepping into his tomb. The wreck shuddered as docking clamps latched onto it. He heard the distant thud of metal on metal, the hiss of airlocks, breaking the vacuum. For the first time in countless years, the sound of footsteps echoed through the corridors. Heavy, steady, unafraid. He stumbled forward, gripping the wall for support, dragging his weakened body toward the central chamber. Each step echoed with the pounding of his heart. Would they kill him? Would they save him? He didn't know. But he knew one thing. Whatever came next, it was better than the endless silence. The door at the far end of the chamber burst open. Shapes moved through the smoke and dust. They were tall, armored, their helmets glowing faintly with blue visors. Weapons hung ready in their hands. Humans. They scanned the room quickly, their movements sharp, disciplined. Then one of them froze, their visor locking onto him. The survivor lifted his trembling hands, showing he carried no weapon. The soldier stepped closer. For a moment, nothing was said. Then the human spoke in a voice that carried both caution and authority. "You are not human. State your species." The survivor's throat tightened. His people had abandoned him. To admit his origin felt like a curse. But he forced the words out. I was of the Kale, but no longer. They left me here to die. The humans did not move. Their weapons did not lower. But their leader gave a short command. 2 soldiers moved to his side, scanning him with their devices. The machines beeped, confirming what he already knew. His body was failing. His life was nearly gone. The leader's voice came again, sharp but steady. You're dying. If you want to live, you come with us. But understand this, we don't save enemies. We save survivors. Choose carefully. The words struck him deeper than any blade. In that moment, he understood what humanity truly was: not merciful angels, not mindless killers, but something far more dangerous. They gave choices. And choices carried weight. With tears burning his eyes, he whispered his answer. I choose to live. The humans exchanged glances, silent and unreadable behind their glowing visors. Then one of them reached out a hand. For the first time in years, he felt another's touch. And in that touch, the silence of the void was broken forever. Asterisk, the human warship, the survivor's legs, nearly collapsed when they pulled him through the broken airlock. The wreck had been his prison for so long that the sudden rush of clean air, the sharp scent of filtered oxygen, nearly made him dizzy. He coughed hard, his chest rattling, but the humans did not let him fall. Their hands were firm, guiding him into their world of steel and power. The moment the airlock sealed behind him, the survivor felt something he had forgotten long ago: warmth. The human ship's corridors pulsed with life, the low hum of engines running strong, the steady rhythm of power systems feeding every wall. It was not the cold, hollow death of his wreck. It was alive like the people who built it. Asterisk soldiers escorted him forward. Their weapons remained ready, though not pointed at him. They did not trust easily. He understood that. He would not have trusted them either. As they moved through the wide metal halls, he saw more humans. They stopped what they were doing to stare at him. Their faces were bare, unhidden by helmets, their eyes sharp and filled with curiosity and caution. Whispers followed him. What is he? One voice muttered. Enemy? Another asked. But no one touched him. No one struck him down. The humans simply watched. Finally, they brought him to a large chamber filled with glowing screens and heavy chairs. At the center stood a tall figure without a helmet. His face was scarred, his eyes cold but intelligent. The survivor knew immediately. This was the captain. The soldiers saluted. The captain's voice was steady, deep, carrying the weight of command. You are the one we found in the wreck? The survivor nodded weakly. Yes, I am. What remains? The captain studied him in silence. The air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were listening. Then the captain spoke again. Your ship, it belonged to the Kale. The survivor's chest tightened. Even here, among strangers, the name of his people burned like a brand. He lowered his head. Yes, but they left. Me, they abandoned me to die in the void. The captain's eyes narrowed. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned to one of his officers. Get medical to check him. He's half dead already. The officer nodded and moved quickly, but the captain stopped him with one more word. Wait. His gaze returned to the survivor. If you are Kale, why should I let you live? The Kale have hunted us before. They burned our colonies. They slaughtered without mercy. Give me one reason why I should not space you now. The survivor trembled. His body was weak, but his mind sharpened with desperation. He met the captain's cold eyes and spoke with all the strength left in him. Because I am not Kale anymore. They left me behind. They chose themselves. I am nothing to them, but I still want to live. If you kill me, then the void wins. and I refused to let it win. The chamber grew silent. Even the hum of the engines seemed to fade. The humans stared, waiting for their captain's judgment. The captain leaned forward slightly, his scarred face unreadable. Then, slowly, a thin smile touched his lips. "You refuse to die. That makes you closer to human and to Kale." He gave a sharp nod. "Take him to medical. If he survives the night, we'll see what use he has." Relief washed over the survivor so strongly that tears burned his eyes. He bowed his head, unable to speak. The soldiers guided him away into the heart of the warship. Medical machines. Whirred to life around him, scanning his failing body, injecting fluids and energy into his veins. For the first time in years, real food was placed in his hands. It was simple, plain human rations, but to him, it tasted like life itself. As he lay on the medical bed, drifting between exhaustion and awakening, he felt the warship's engines roar beneath him. They were not drifting aimlessly like his. Dead wreck. They were moving with purpose. Through the walls, he could hear voices, human voices. They spoke with strength, with determination. No hesitation. No fear. It struck him deeply. These humans were not like his people. The Kale had abandoned him to save themselves. Humans did not abandon their own. They carried their wounded. They saved their dying. Even him, an enemy, they had pulled from the void. But he also knew something else. The humans had not saved him out of kindness. They had saved him because he had shown something they valued. Refusal to give up. Refusal to bow. That was humanity's. Measure. As he closed his eyes, he whispered to himself, a vow only he could hear. I will not waste this life. If the void could not kill me, nothing else will. Far above him, the human warship thundered through the stars, carrying him into a future he had never imagined. And in that moment, he realized his true story was only beginning. The test of trust. The hum of the warship's engines became his lullaby. Days passed, and the survivor's body slowly regained strength. Human medicine was not as advanced as Kale technology had been, but it was efficient, practical, and unrelenting. They patched his wounds, flushed poison from his blood, and forced his frail body to eat and drink until life returned to his bones. He had thought he would be treated like a prisoner, locked away and forgotten. But instead, the humans watched him closely, tested him, studied him. Soldiers stood guard at every door, and sharp-eyed officers recorded every word he spoke. He was not free, but he was alive. One evening, the captain himself came to see him. The man's scarred face looked even harsher under the white lights of the medical chamber. You're recovering faster than expected, the captain said. His voice calm but heavy. The survivor lowered his head. I am grateful. The captain studied him for a long moment, then spoke words that made the survivor's blood run cold. Gratitude is not enough. You want to live? Prove you are not an enemy. Prove you are not Kale. The survivor's hands trembled. How? The captain leaned closer, his eyes sharp as blades. By helping us. Your people left you, but they are still our enemy. You know their ways, their ships, their weaknesses. Share that knowledge, and maybe you earn your place here. The survivor froze. His heart hammered in his chest. Betray the Kale? The ones who had abandoned him, left him to rot. Part of him burned with anger at the thought of still being loyal to them. But another part whispered fear. If he gave up their secrets, he would be hated by both sides, hunted by his past and distrusted by his present. Still, he remembered the cold void. He remembered years of silence, years of waiting for a rescue. That never came. His people had chosen themselves over him. Why should he protect them now? He raised his head slowly and met the captain's eyes. I will help. Tell me what you need to know. For the first time, the captain gave a slight, Nod of approval. Good. Then your first test begins now. They led him to a strategy chamber. Maps of stars and battle routes glowed across the walls. Human officers stood around the table, their faces stern, their voices quiet. When the survivor entered, all eyes turned toward him. "This is the alien we found," the captain announced. "He claims to have knowledge of the Kale fleet. Tonight, we will find out if that claim has value." The survivor swallowed hard. He looked at the glowing map. It showed the outer rim, scattered colonies, and patrol routes. He recognized them instantly. The Kale often raided these zones, using speed and stealth. "They strike here," he said, pointing to a sector near the Nebari Belt. "Your patrols, there are too light. They wait in the shadows until your transports pass. Then they attack." In swarms, the humans exchanged glances. One officer narrowed his eyes. "And why should we believe you?" The survivor's voice hardened. "Because I lived through it. I saw the raids. I know their hunger. The Kale do not fight for honor or survival. They fight because they enjoy the hunt. If you doubt me, then keep your ships blind, and you will watch them burn." The chamber fell silent. The officers studied him, measuring his words. Finally, the captain spoke. "Send a probe to the Nebari Belt. Confirm his claim." An officer saluted and left. The tension in the room was heavy. The survivor stood still, every second stretching longer than the years he had endured in the wreck. Hours later, the officer returned. His face was grim. "Report. Multiple Kale ships detected, lying in wait near the Nebari Belt. His information is accurate." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some humans looked at him with suspicion still, but others now with cautious respect. The captain turned to him once more. "It seems you told the truth. That earns you one step closer to trust. But remember one. False word, one lie, and your life ends." The survivor bowed his head. "I understand." That night, as he returned to the quiet of his medical quarters, the survivor lay awake, staring at the metal ceiling. He thought of his choice. He had betrayed the Kale, yes, but had they not betrayed him first? He wondered if this was truly survival, or the first step in becoming something new. He whispered softly to himself, as if testing the weight of the words. Not Kale, not forgotten, something else. The ship's engines roared beneath him, carrying him forward into a war that was no longer his. Yet perhaps soon it would be. Asterisk fire in the belt, the warship Resolute cut through the dark like a blade. Its crew moved with purpose, their voices sharp, their eyes focused. The survivor could feel the change around him. He was no longer just cargo, no longer just a curiosity. The humans were preparing for battle. From the viewing deck, he watched. The stars slide by. Soon, the familiar shadows of the Nebari Belt filled the horizon. It was a graveyard of broken asteroids and drifting ice, the perfect place for an ambush. The survivor's chest tightened. He had warned them, but now he would. See if they truly believed him. The captain's voice thundered over the combs. "All stations ready, weapons primed, stay sharp." The survivor gripped the railing, his knuckles pale. His people, the Kale, were out there, waiting. He wondered if he would recognize any of them. Perhaps the ones who had left him behind now sat in those ships, laughing, unaware that the ghost they abandoned had returned with humans at his side. Then the ambush began. Shadows burst from the asteroids, engines blazing. Kale raiders swarmed like wolves, dozens of them, sleek ships armed with deadly cannons. They moved fast, circling, striking with precision. Any lesser fleet would have been torn apart in seconds. But the humans did not scatter. They did not run. The Resolute roared as its cannons lit the void. Bright fire cut through the swarm, burning raiders into dust. Human fighters launched from the bays, engines howling like predators unleashed. They did not flee from the Kale's fury. They charged straight into it. The survivor's heart pounded. He had seen the Kale break entire fleets, but never had he seen an enemy meet them with such raw ferocity. The humans were not afraid. They fought as if fear itself had no place in their blood. Still, the Kale pressed hard. More ships appeared, their formation tightening, their fire hammering against the Resolute's shields. The hull groaned. Alarms echoed through the corridors. For a moment, the survivor felt the old dread, the same dread that had left him stranded in the void. But the captain's voice came again, calm yet burning with steel. Hold the line, aim for their wings, break their swarm. The humans obeyed instantly. Their weapons shifted, striking not at random, but with ruthless precision. They targeted the Kale's coordination, blasting apart lead ships, scattering. Their formation. The survivor's eyes widened as he realized the truth. The Kale were hunters. Yes, but humans were something worse. They were survivors. They turned every weakness into a weapon, every moment into an opportunity. Within minutes, the swarm began to falter. Kale ships exploded one after another, their sleek forms ripped apart by human firepower. The survivors tried to retreat into the shadows of the belt, but the Resolute hunted them down without mercy. When the last raider was reduced to drifting wreckage, silence filled the chamber once more. The humans erupted into shouts of triumph, their fists slamming against consoles, their voices carrying pride. The survivor stood frozen, his chest heavy with emotion. He had watched his people destroy countless enemies, but never had he seen them broken so completely. The Kale were predators, but predators that fled when the hunt turned against them. Humans did not flee. They finished. The captain turned toward him, his scarred face lit by the glow of victory. Your information saved lives today. You've proven your worth. The survivor lowered his head. I only told you what I knew. You are the ones who fought. The captain's eyes narrowed, as if weighing something. Knowledge and will together make strength. You've shown both. That makes you dangerous. And in this galaxy, dangerous is valuable. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, the survivor sat alone. His hands trembled not from fear, but from awe. The humans had not just survived the ambush, they had crushed it. He thought back to the long years in the void. His people had abandoned him, left him to die. They would have done the same to any of their kind, because the Kale only cared for strength and only for themselves. But humans? Humans fought not just for survival, but for each other. They did not abandon their wounded. They did not bow to fear. He felt a fire in his chest that he had not felt in years. A fire that the void could not kill. For the first time, he whispered words he never thought he would speak. I was Kale, but maybe. Now I am something else. The engines of the Resolute roared once more, carrying the human warship deeper into the stars. And with it, the survivor began to carry something new inside him, not just survival, but purpose. Asterisk, the choice of battle. The wreckage of the Kale raiders drifted silently in the Nebari belt, glowing faintly from scattered fires. The Resolute moved past them like a predator, leaving the bones of its prey. But the survivor knew this was only the beginning. The Kale would not forget. They would come again, in greater numbers, with greater fury. And this time, he would have to face them not as one of them, but as something different. The survivor sat in the warship's mess hall, surrounded by humans. The air was filled with voices, laughter, the clatter of metal trays. The humans ate with the ease of those who had earned victory, their faces lit with pride. Yet their eyes often drifted toward him, some with suspicion, some with curiosity, and a few with silent respect. He kept his head low. He was still a stranger here, but he listened to their words, their stories. They joked about danger, laughed at near-death moments, and spoke of battles as if they were challenges to overcome, not curses. It was strange. His people had always feared loss, feared weakness, but humans? They wore their scars like trophies. Captain entered, and the hall grew silent. His scarred face was harder than steel, but his eyes carried fire. He looked first at his crew, then at the survivor. "We have intercepted Kale transmissions," the captain announced. "They know we destroyed their raiding force. They are sending a war fleet to this sector. Their intent is clear: wipe us out." A ripple of tension spread through the crew. No one doubted the danger. A Kale fleet meant destruction. Yet not one human lowered their gaze. The captain's voice thundered again. "We are outnumbered, outgunned. But we are not outmatched. Not today. Not ever. We will hold this line. We will show them why humanity does not bow." The hall erupted. In shouts of agreement, fists slamming on tables. The survivor felt the energy of their resolve sink deep into his bones. Then the captain turned, his gaze directly on him. "You know the Kale. You know their fleets, their tactics. You say they abandoned you. Now prove it. Stand with us in this fight." The survivor's breath caught. His mind swirled with fear and fire. Stand against his own people? Face the very ones who had left him in the void? He thought of their cold eyes, their broken promises. He thought of the years alone in silence, forgotten. And then he thought of the humans who had pulled him from death, who fought not just for themselves, but for each other. His voice shook at first, but grew stronger with each word. "I will stand with you. I will face them." The humans did not cheer. They simply nodded, as if the answer had been expected. The captain gave one sharp nod of approval. Then fight not as Kale, but as one who has seen the void and returned. Fight as one who refuses to die. Hours later, alarms echoed. Through the ship, the Kale fleet had arrived. From the command deck, the survivor saw them emerge from the shadow's massive warships bristling with weapons, sleek and deadly, moving in perfect formation. His chest tightened. This was no raiding party. This was an execution force. The captain's voice rang out across the bridge. All stations ready. The Resolute's weapons charged, its shields flared to life. Human fighters launched again, streaking into the void. The survivor gripped the railing, his hands shaking. He pointed at the Kale formation. "They will. Strike your engines first. Their forward ships will try to cut your movement. You must break their wings, shatter their formation before they surround you." The captain's eyes narrowed, but he gave the order. "Target the wings. Hit them. Hard." The battle exploded. Kale cannons ripped through space, their fire slamming into the Resolute's shields. The ship groaned, metal screaming, but it held. Human guns roared back, striking the lead wings of the Kale formation. Explosions tore through their flanks, scattering their order. Fighters clashed in the void, spiraling in deadly dances. Human pilots moved with reckless bravery, weaving through enemy fire, striking blows even when outnumbered. The survivors. Blood raced. He shouted directions, warnings, predictions. "They're shifting left. Their flagship moves to cut us strike its escorts now." The humans followed his calls, and each time the Kale staggered. Their perfect formation cracked under the relentless human assault. Still, the Kale pressed forward. More ships loomed, their guns burning brighter. The Resolute shook under the storm. Lights flickered, alarms screamed. For a moment, it felt as if the void was ready to claim them all. Then the captain's voice cut through the chaos, strong, unshaken. "Hold the line. This ship does not fall." The crew roared in answer, their voices like thunder. And for the first time, the survivor roared with them. His voice joined theirs, his heart beating with theirs. He was no longer the forgotten, no longer the abandoned odd in. That moment, he was fighting as one of them. Asterisk, the silence broken forever. The battle raged like fire across the stars. The Resolute shook with every strike, but it refused to fall. The Kale fleet pressed harder, their cannons blazing, their numbers overwhelming. The void lit up with explosions, wreckage spinning through the black. The survivor stood at the command deck, his heart pounding. He had once feared the Kale above all else, but now he saw them clearly. They were not gods of war. They were not invincible. They were hunters, yes, but hunters who had never faced prey that fought back like this. Humans did not run. They did not scatter. Even when outnumbered, even when their ship screamed under the storm, they fought harder. Every strike, every maneuver, carried defiance. It was not just survival. It was will. The Kale flagship loomed at the center of the hill. Fleet, its massive guns tearing into the Resolute's shields. The captain's scarred face was calm, but his voice carried steel. If we break that flagship, the rest will fall. Aim everything we have at its core. The survivor's eyes widened. He knew that ship. It was the pride of the Kale fleet. The same vessel that had commanded the raid where his people had abandoned him. Somewhere on that bridge sat the commander who had left him to die. Rage burned in his chest, hotter than fear. He leaned toward the captain. Strike its lower decks. That's where the command core lies. They hide it there, believing no enemy dares come so close. But if you hit it, their entire fleet will. Break. The captain met his eyes. There was no doubt in them, no hesitation, only trust. Then that's where we strike. The Resolute surged forward, its engines roaring. The Kale flagship fired relentlessly, pounding the human ship with wave after wave. The hull screamed, sparks showered across the bridge, but the humans did not falter. Shields failing. An officer shouted, "Push through," the captain commanded. The survivor gripped the railing, his body shaking. Every second felt like a knife's edge. If the shields collapsed too soon, they would be torn apart. But the humans refused to turn. Away, closer, closer still. The Kale flagship loomed like a beast of metal, its cannons blazing, its wings spread wide. The survivor thought of the years he had spent in silence, of the day his people had left him, of the endless void that had nearly claimed him. And he thought of the humans, their laughter, their scars, their refusal to surrender. When the Resolute reached striking distance, the captain's voice thundered, "Fire!" The human cannons unleashed everything at once. Blazing streams of energy tore into the Kale's lower decks, ripping through armor, smashing into the hidden command core. For a heartbeat, the void froze, then the flagship erupted in a storm of fire. The explosion shook the stars. Fragments of the mighty ship spun away, burning, crumbling. The Kale fleet faltered, their formation broken, their will shattered. Without their command, they scattered like frightened predators chased from their kill. The survivor fell to his knees, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with tears. The flagship, the very symbol of his people's pride, was gone. And it had been destroyed not by his people, not by the Kale's enemies of old, but by humanity. The bridge erupted in cheers. Humans shouted, clapped each other's shoulders, their voices rising like thunder. The captain stood tall, his scarred face lit by the fire of victory. The survivor looked at him, and for the first time he felt no fear, no doubt, only respect. "You did it," he whispered. The captain's eyes narrowed. "We did it. You gave us their weakness. Without you, many of us would be dead. You are not Kale anymore. Remember that." The survivor lowered his head, his chest heavy with emotion. He had been abandoned, forgotten, left to rot. But now, here among humans, he had found something greater than survival. He had found belonging. When the battle was over, silence returned to the stars. But it was not the same silence he had once known. It was no longer the silence of death, of loneliness, of endless waiting. It was the silence of victory, the kind that followed thunder. The survivor stood at the viewing deck as the Resolute cut through the void, its engines strong, its crew alive. He placed a hand against the cold glass and whispered into the endless black, "You left me. You abandoned me. But I was not alone, not forever. Humanity found me, and they do not abandon their own." His reflection in the glass was not Kale anymore. It was something new, something forged by fire, silence, and survival. The void had taken everything from him, his people, his past, his name. But the humans had given him something far more powerful, a future. Asterisk.